From Ohio. The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering. Unjustified. Proven wrong. We've got a week, we've got 2 weeks to write a good bill. The only way to pass a bad bill, keep the panic pressure on. Now, what has the Senate done to this bill?
That it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack or natural disaster. A plan that provides for the cooperation, the coordination, and continued functioning of all three branches of the government. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist, and that's why they won't show it to us. I don't know. Or maybe there's something there that's outrageous. The American people need their elected representatives to review this plan for the continuity of government.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what?
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster? Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
One of the programs that got exposed during Iran-Contra was Rex 84. And Congressman Jack Brooks, in those hearings, brought up the fact that in reality, FEMA was a cover for a huge continuity of government program in case the American people ever rebelled. And that was the architecture or the blueprint for the illegitimate shadow government to fully take over the functions of the entire federal government, suspend the Constitution, suspend the Bill of Rights, and arrest whoever they wanted to. And FEMA was going to control the camps that the people were going to be put into. And FEMA would be the main governmental institution with different directors over every agency. And now when you watch FEMA on television, it's always a colonel or a general or an admiral in uniform who's over the different departments.
The martial law portions of Rex 84 were outlined in a 1982 memo written by FEMA Deputy John Brinkerhoff. Martial law was to be declared in the event of a national crisis, yet the plan did not define the term national crisis. The plan allowed FEMA to take control of both federal and state governments, appointing military commanders to replace duly elected officials. The plan also called for the rounding up of at least 21 million American Negroes for delivery to numerous military bases converted into prison centers, also known as FEMA relocation camps. Why? Because at that time, African Americans were classified as one of the largest threats to the continuity of the federal government. Who does the federal government consider the biggest threat these days?
The convergence of globalization and technology has created a new brand of terrorism. There were persons who, for whatever reason, came to view their home country as the enemy.
the kind of right-wing, religious-based domestic terrorism.
Disturbing news tonight about homegrown terror.
Part of this is big change in the White House, a new cultural experience, and some of the crazies are coming out of their closet.
Right now, it looks like there is no connection between the men arrested and any known terrorist cell. Homegrown. Homegrown, I should say.
Nobody respects one's liberty, but trying to find a balanced way. So, in summary here, 1032, the military custody provision, which has waivers and a lot of flexibility, doesn't apply to American citizens. 1031, the statement of authority to detain, does apply to American citizens, and it designates the world as the battlefield, including the homeland. Are you familiar with the Padilla case? That is a federal court case involving an American citizen captured in the United States that was held for several years as an enemy combatant. His case went to the Fourth Circuit. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said an American citizen can be held by our military as an enemy combatant, even if they're caught here in the United States, because once you join the enemy forces, then you present a military threat, and your citizenship is not a sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card. That the law of the land is an American citizen can be held as an enemy combatant. That went to the Fourth Circuit, and that, as I speak, is the law of the land.
That's right. That is the law of the land.
When they say, I want my lawyer, you tell them, shut up. Your time to get a lawyer. You're an enemy combatant.
Does that only apply to U.S. citizen that's overseas, or does that apply to U.S. citizen that's here?
I'd have to go back. I'm not certain whether that was addressed or not.
So that we have clarity here, he is not certain whether it was addressed, whether our government can kill our own people inside our own country. This really needs to be addressed. We can't just answer this question. No, the government doesn't kill our own people. We have a process for this. It's called the justice system. You file charges, you lock them up, you try them before a jury of their peers, and then that's how. They don't kill our own people. Judge, the question is, can they kill our own citizens inside our own country? This is a question we have to ask.
It's not a question that we should have to ask, and it's not a question that he should have evaded answering. I think he probably knows that the answer is no, but he doesn't want to frustrate his bosses, who articulated just 2 days earlier that the answer is yes, because at a speech on Tuesday at Northwestern University Law School, the Attorney General of the United States manifested extraordinary ignorance of the Constitution of the United States and suggested the president can kill anybody he wants outside the United States if that person is dangerous, if that person has committed crimes, and if it's impractical to arrest that person. Not in the opinion of a jury, but in the opinion of the president and some secret advisors. The Constitution says to the contrary. The Constitution says if the government wants your life or your liberty or your property, it has to articulate to a jury what law you have violated and prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt to that jury. It's called due process. Without due process, the government could take anything it wanted and kill anybody it wanted. And Attorney General Holder ought to know that. I suggest that Bob Mueller does. And the reason he evaded that answer is because he wants to keep his job.
Now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists, the terrorists, the terrorists.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
That's the problem we have today. This conspiracy is so monstrous, so demonic, that we tell people about it and they say, you're crazy. This is America. It can't happen here. There are red and blue lists out there. Have you already heard about the red and blue list, okay? But anyway, I've had people calling me saying they go out to their mailbox and they find a little red dot or a little blue dot on their mailbox, and they wonder what the little red dot, blue dot is. Well, it's marking your mailbox by the government, so when foreign troops come in here on us after martial law, if you have a red dot on your mailbox, they take you out immediately and shoot you right in the head. But if you have a blue dot, they take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America by Halliburton to put those with the blue dot on your mailbox in those concentration camps. Now, if you go out and you find a pink dot on your mailbox, that means that they believe you'll be a good slave. So I'm going to tell all of you, if you have not bought ammunition, if you have not bought guns, go get them now.
I will not take your shotgun away. I will not take your rifle away. I won't take your handgun away.
And I can tell you right now, well, somebody had the great idea to get rid of the Iraqi army, so when we rebuilt it, we did everything we could to make it as strong as possible. And I'll tell you right now, Homeland Security would kick their butts in a week. What's happening here is we're building a domestic military because it's unlawful or unconstitutional to use American troops on American soil. So what we're doing is we're building a military. My best friend, who's a SWAT officer in Nashua, who came to Iraq with me to train the Iraqi police, sent me an email with a picture of him in the media on the streets of Watertown, Mass, wearing the exact same combat gear that we had in Iraq, only it was a different color. And the way we do things in the military is called task organization. You take a command and then you attach units to it in order to accomplish the mission. What's happening is Homeland Security is pre-staging gear, equipment, consistent. What they're trying to do is use standardized vehicles, standardized equipment. I saw a picture in the Boston Globe during the marathon bombing where there was a state police officer, actually there were two officers, they both had identical helmets, flak jackets, weapons, everything I wore in Iraq, only it was all blue. The officer on one side had a big patch on his back that said Massachusetts State Police. Another officer next to him, his patch said Boston Police. And so what we're doing here, and let's not kid about it, we're building a domestic army and we're shrinking the military because the government is afraid of its own citizens. The last time more than 10 terrorists were in the same place at one time was September 11th, and all these vehicles in the world wouldn't have prevented it, nor would it have helped anybody. So I don't know where we're going to use this many vehicles and this many troops. Concord is just one little cog in the wheel. We're building an army over here, and I can't believe that people aren't seeing it. Is everybody blind?
Right now, the cops are banging at the door. It's about 1:30 in the morning. They're still banging on the door.
Law enforcement can be sued.
I told them over and over again, they're at the wrong address. They keep yelling out 4663, and that is the wrong address. They are not at the right place. And they will not stop. They have not told me what they're here for. They've been banging on my door since 1:30 a.m. It's now 2 o'clock a.m. They have still not told me what they're here for, and they're threatening to break into my home.
It's harassment. I haven't done anything.
Sir, we're opening the door. Please stop. We're opening the door. Please stop. Okay, please stop. You're being filmed. Please stop. Please stop. You're all on camera. Please stop. We will open the door. We will open the door. We will open the door. Just stop. Who's the supervisor? Lord, please. Lord, please.
I rebuke Satan back to the depths of hell from whence he came. I rebuke Satan back to the depths of hell from whence he came. I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. I'm a Christian woman. I haven't done anything.
I am in my apartment, sir.
Go back inside right now.
I am inside. This is my door. I'm standing right inside my apartment. Sir, I'm inside my apartment.
Apparently we're not the ones harboring a fugitive. Yeah, this is our garage right now. What the hell? This is what we woke up to this morning. don't ever want to wake up to this again. But clearly with this many cars in the driveway, I'm guessing this is a area they wanted to check out.
Crap. Wow. They're...
with machine guns.
Leaders arriving in Pittsburgh for the G20 summit are finding a city on lockdown.
The next moment, my eardrums were blasting, and as that happened, I basically turned around, saw about 40 riot police assisted by military.
They're closing in. Run! Get out! I told you! This is why police take us back!
You must leave immediate vicinity.
This was the talk of the town in Hardin on Thursday. Mercedes decked out in the City of Hardin Police Department decals and driven by American Police Force members.
We're not disclosing the name of our parent company.
We know the guy that owns the company, but we've never seen this name before.
Excuse me, you just dropped a bomb on us. This is Red Dawn, foreign mercenary group admitted, driving around doing police work with Hardin Police next to their American Police Force logos. This is insane.
In 1999, American citizens were put in the Sandpoint Naval Brig outside of Seattle, Washington, and the news reported that FEMA was in control of the operation and was using the closed naval base as a mass prison. And the people were put in plastic handcuffs and taken indoors, inside warehouse areas that had barbed wire fences, porta potties, and cots. The same system we saw set up at Pier 57 a few years later in 2004 for the Republican National Convention in New York City.
Convention protest groups are not happy with what they call a clandestine detention center.
We discovered officers that had to spray tear gas to control one protester, and then at least 4 officers held down another protester.
The recent discovery of a makeshift jail in Denver's warehouse district is causing an outrage among some.
It's a warehouse filled with makeshift jail cells to be used if there are mass arrests.
It was apparently constructed to hold DNC protesters.
Those cages are for the safety of law enforcement agents and those who are arrested, but Recreate 68 calls this place a concentration camp, unfit and inappropriate.
We don't need another gulag or stalag or prison, whatever you want to call it, to house people who just want to express an opinion of a better world. That's why we have the protests.
This lot sitting right next to where we're filming right now, it's fairly big, comprising several acres. That itself, we readily turned into a holding area by virtue of some concertina wire, some observation guard post, and a security ring. Doesn't take much. It can be a sports arena. It can be abandoned airports. It could be abandoned military facilities. Any place that you could set up a security perimeter could be used as a temporary internment camp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last nail is being driven into the coffin of the American Republic, yet Congress remains in total denial as our liberties are rapidly fading before our eyes. The process is propelled by unwarranted fear and ignorance as to the true meaning of liberty. It is driven by economic myths, fallacies, and irrational good intentions. The rule of law is constantly rejected, and authoritarian answers are offered as panaceas for all our problems. Runaway welfarism is used to benefit the rich at the expense of the middle class. Who would have ever thought that the current generation and Congress would stand idly by and watch such a rapid disintegration of the American Republic? Characteristic of this epic event is the casual acceptance by the people and the political leaders of the unitary presidency, which is equivalent to granting dictatorial powers to the president. Our presidents can now, on their own, order assassinations, including American citizens, operate secret military tribunals, engage in torture, enforce indefinite imprisonments without due process, order searches and seizures without proper warrants, gutting the Fourth Amendment, Ignore the 60-day rule for reporting to the Congress the nature of any military operation as required by the War Powers Resolution. Continue the Patriot Act abuses without oversight. Wage war at will. Treat all Americans as suspected terrorists at airports with TSA groping and nude x-ray. And the Federal Reserve accommodates by counterfeiting the funds needed and not paid for by taxation and borrowing, permitting runaway spending, endless debt, and special interest bailouts. And all of this is not enough. The abuses and usurpations of the war power are soon to be codified in the National Defense Authorization Act, now rapidly moving its way through Congress. Instead of repealing the 2001 authorization for the use of military force, as we should, now that bin Laden is dead and gone, Congress is planning to massively increase the war power of the president.
The people that are behind this treaty want that world government.
Eventually controlling the market.
Eventually controlling all of us.
Sure.
Yes.
A world
government. That's the value set of John Kerry, Barack Obama, and their allies in Europe.
Show some of the pictures of the Boston police, okay? Look at this. This country is becoming a police state, and it is very troubling to me.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order, because the global order is changing again.
But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
The transatlantic partnership was never just the foundation of our security. It was the foundation of our way of life. It was forged an experience of the most bitter and anguished kind. Out of it came a new Europe, a new world order, a new consensus as to how life should and could be lived.
And my great passion is building the big society, the big society, the big society, the big society. To take this opportunity to explain some of the real practical steps that we are taking to help make the big society a reality. But before I get into the details, let me briefly explain what the big society is and why I believe it's such a powerful idea. You can call it liberalism, you can call it empowerment, you can call it freedom, you can call it responsibility, but I call it the big society. The big society is about a huge culture change where people in their everyday lives, in their homes, in their neighborhoods, in their workplaces, don't always turn to officials, local authorities or central government for answers to the problems they face, but instead feel both free and powerful enough to help themselves and their own communities.
Again, this Republican-Democrat thing, all the world is a stage. Obama is a puppet.
He reads the script. He's a teleprompter reader. That's his official job. He doesn't make any decisions. The powers that be that have the majority of power in this world are those that control the financial system. The financial crisis engineered by these same criminals who are the ultimate fraudsters of the world. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, those are the real string pullers. That's real power. I wish we had more time to talk about that.
Well,
I'd be happy to do it. Well, thankfully, there are those within the ranks of the U.S. military who have expressed what they really feel about the war by supporting only one candidate in America, and that's Ron Paul. He receives more funding from active duty military than all the other candidates combined. Why is that? Because he's the only one who will get them out of the hell that their traitorous governments, these chicken hawks who would never go to war themselves, have sent off American sons and daughters to do this dirty work. No, war is out of control, and those who are destroying this world by fraud and deception is what's out of control. 9/11 was the false flag operation used to justify the invasion of Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden said directly in the aftermath that he had nothing to do with it. No case has gone to trial convicting Osama bin Laden or the so-called 19 hijackers, which includes people who were going to strip joints, snorting cocaine, and drinking booze, supposedly on a jihad. Building 7 is the smoking gun, which makes clear that thermite was used to bring down those buildings in a controlled demolition. And all of this was done by Zionists and American traitors, along with intelligence agencies from Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. It is the ultimate deception, and it's done for a full-spectrum dominance agenda, which is part of controlling this world by deception. And unless we as people stand up to these treasonous traitors and all of those people carrying out this stuff, and the colluders, including the mass media and the politicians, we are going to continue to get this kind of deception.
Well,
and I must say, love and respect to all of the Afghani people, Iraqi people, and the Palestinians, and everyone else who's fighting the empire, and Sister Afia Siddiqui must be freed.
Perhaps our greatest achievement in banking is the Federal Reserve System. It is a collection of international banks owned by Allumacorp members and financiers. It was created to form a centralized banking system through the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, an act that was indeed penned by some of our most esteemed members. Many of you might still assume that the government itself prints and issues the currency. That is not the case. When America needs money, they go to our boys and ask for it. The money is printed, but it is only representative of a loan. Interest accrues on that dollar until it is paid back to the Fed. In fact, the federal taxes paid by the American population go almost entirely to paying off this debt. So you see, Allumacorp derives a healthy amount of its operation funding directly from the debt of the public. Needless to say, this is one of our most crucial sources of funding, and one of our proudest achievements here at Allumacorp. Through mergers and acquisitions, we have slowly and silently bought up the majority of U.S. industry. Allumacorp and its members own most of the oil, transport, banking, media, food and communications industries in America and abroad. Through fewer and fewer conglomerates, we are able to effect with great precision the machinations of labor and government. Ultimately, corporations will replace government as a centralized international body that can meet the needs of the public worldwide without the chaos created by national self-interest. When Allumacorp goes public, corporatism will be the foundation for world government. Conglomerates will merge into one cohesive corporation that is responsible only to Allumacorp and the needs of its global employment force.
This is the Serco Group. They run all 7 immigration detention centres in Australia, but they do lots more. In fact, they're probably the biggest company you've never heard of. Governments all around the world outsource to Serco. They run half of London's traffic lights, all of Dublin's, and in Ontario, Canada, they test you for your driver's licence. Serco are also the largest air traffic controllers in the world. They've got 54 towers in the US, and they control Baghdad's air traffic. They even maintain the RAF squadron the Queen flies on. All over the planet, Serco are moving people, from metros in Dubai to buses in Adelaide. And they're good at stopping people from moving too. Serco will soon be the largest operator of private prisons in the UK, and they're very efficient at it. In one prison, they increase capacity by 20%, simply by putting beds in the toilets. In another Serco prison, a 14-year-old hanged himself after being assaulted by Serco guards, the UK's youngest ever death in custody. But don't think Serco aren't good with kids. In Bradford, they run all the state schools in the district. Serco is the model of a modern multinational, and that's why they're the right company to keep us safe. They've been running the UK's ballistic missile defence system ever since it was outsourced 40 years ago. In fact, they look after Britain's entire nuclear arsenal, from creation to decommissioning. But wait, there's more. Serco are so good at running things, they even run time itself. That's right, Serco have the contract for setting Greenwich Mean Time. And Serco just keep getting bigger. Since 1994, they've grown by 1,200%. How have they been so successful? CEO Chris Hyman puts his success with Serco down to listening to God. Now, you might think things like nuclear arsenals and border protection are best handled by the government, but that's not a problem for Serco because about 85% of their workforce are ex-public servants, so they have all the training and connections necessary to handle big government contracts. In Australia, Serco have a presence on every military base, run every immigration detention centre, 2 prisons, cross-country trains like the Indian Pacific and the GAN, and they're bidding on more contracts right now, including one to run prisons across New South Wales. So, even if you don't know their name, chances are you're caught in their web. Serco, bringing service to life.
Have you guys ever heard of a company called Serco? Well, it might be the biggest company that you have never heard of. Everyone knows about the private prison industry, the transportation industry, and government agencies. But what if I told you that there was just one company that oversaw almost every facet of all of these sectors? Yep, that's Serco, the mother of all multinational corporations. Serco is a $1.5 billion services company based in Hook, North Hampshire in the United Kingdom, whose motto is bringing services to life. So, what the hell does that actually mean? Well, according to their website, Serco improves the quality and efficiency of essential services that matter to millions of people around the world. The work we do for national and local governments involves us with the most important areas of public service, including health, education, transport, science, and defense. Now, I know it still sounds very vague about what they actually do, but more importantly is how many industries Serco actually oversees across the entire planet. Since governments from around the world outsource to Serco, the massive corporation has its tentacles in 16 countries worldwide. They cash in on detention. Serco runs 7 immigration centers and has a presence on every military base in Australia. They're also the largest operator of private prisons in the UK. Serco also directs airplanes. They are the largest air traffic controllers in the world with 54 towers in the US alone. The company also supplies air traffic control in Iraq and the United Arab Emirates. Serco also moves people on the ground, from Scotland ferries to Dubai metros. But the company not only manages public transport everywhere, but also operates speed track cameras and creates the software for monitoring traffic across London. But don't worry, Serco's looking out for the kids, guys. They currently have contracts to run every state school in Bradford, England. But they haven't forgotten about Grandma and Grandpa. They're privatizing community centers too. If you haven't figured it out yet, Serco is essentially the Swiss Army knife of corporations. Serco plays doctor too. Private hospitals are a big industry under the umbrella company. And Serco has started to acquire hospitals in Australia and England. Serco is so unbelievably powerful that they even control time. Yep, Serco has friends in such high places, they have been contracted to set Greenwich Mean Time, or GMT. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Do you think that things like running border patrol and protecting nuclear arsenals should be run by a government body or a private multinational? Well, I'm sure you can guess what I'm getting at next. Serco does both. Not only do they look over the country's entire nuclear arsenal, they also run the UK's ballistic missile defense system. In fact, their primary purpose of being stationed here in the United States is to supply defense and intelligence services across the nation. Check out their promo video for the US government.
For the Department of Homeland Security, we manage over 62 million active records, helping to keep our nation secure.
Think of it as an integrated system that helps the right person make the right decision at the right time. For the intelligence community, we provide planning, training, program support, and project execution. And the rest, it's classified.
The rest is classified? Guys, we already think you're shady. Is it really necessary to tell us that you have even more secrets? But thanks for the disclaimer. So what branches of the government does Serco specifically provide services to? Well, the U.S. Army, U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, the Ministry of Ontario, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Marine Corps, Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, U.S. Department of State, the intelligence community. Whew, let me catch my breath. I just wanted to establish the extent of their reach. But wait, there's more. Serco's so passionately committed to the U.S. that they're also working with the government to fight cyber terrorism, and they remain passionately committed to the American government's mission. Check it out.
I like to say we don't have to look hard to find the best and brightest. They find us.
We are passionate about the future of our nation, and we embrace our government's mission as our mission.
We are.
We are.
We are.
We are.
We are.
Your mission, our passion.
We are the company that runs the world. But don't worry, they're passionate about swallowing up the world industry by industry, government by government. Since 1994, they've grown by over 1,200%, and they continue to acquire more contracts and services every day. So how does it happen that a multinational corporation can run things such as the time and the safeguarding of nuclear weapons? Well, about 85% of Serco's employees are also ex-public servants, so they have the know-how and networking to keep that revolving door going. So why don't we know more about Serco? Well, that's just the problem, is that this corporation has way too much power and way too much control. There's no doubt that we live in a corporatocracy. The corporate coup d'etat has already taken over. The question is, how are we going to fight it?